Hi, Ben. Long time no see. All those sorts of things. You're muted.
You are correct. Good to see you again. That's what I was trying to say.
Yes. Good.
How has your day been?
Fine. Had a very good chat with Emily from Red Hat just now. Just good. Got to know her a bit.
Howdy, folks.
Hi, Dan.
Ken, nice to see you here. I know it's quite late.
Oh yeah, hi Dan. Hi Mike. Yeah, thank you.
Ophir, remind me where you're based.
I am in California.
Okay. Early mornings for you then.
Yeah. But I'm not complaining yet.
I like that.
I got around to looking at the minutes from the last time a little bit late, so I've got one nit on that for Helen or Ben, if you can hit that. I got to go to a conference this week, so I also was a little slow getting the slides together for today.
What was the conference?
I got to go to the Linux Plumbers Conference. For the
Oh, how's that?
That was really cool.
I'm guessing quite geeky in a good way.
Yes, it was good geeky. There was not any marketing presentations.
Yeah, I can see marketing presentations being hounded out, probably literally, actually.
So I suppose everybody's project presentation is in a way a form of a marketing presentation.
Well,
I was at the IETF meeting last week, and that was pretty geeky and zero marketing whatsoever.
Yeah.
It was my first time, and I was really, really impressed and intimidated. So
I sometimes love those sorts of meetings or conferences because a bit of imposter syndrome can be quite good for one, right?
Yeah.
I felt it very deep in my bones, for sure. It was kind of interesting, in fact, feedback for everybody here. When I used the word confidential computing in some of my questions and comments, people looked at me and then they came back to me later and said, we don't use that term. That's a marketing term. So it was kind of a turn off. It is
absolutely not a marketing term. They need to, if they say that again, please point them at our technical white papers. It's not a marketing term. We've been very careful to define it in terms of the technical stuff. So
I appreciate that, but it's kind of, when I'm by myself with 1,500 engineers.
Oh yeah, no, I get
I can't really argue the fact that it's not marketing, but what they believe is the truth.
There's
how do
a
they
number
call
of
it,
people
Manu?
on the old Zoom link, and so there's at least 4 people sitting over on the old session. I was on there too, just tried to find a way to find the link to this one.
Manu, how do they call it if it's not confidential computing? Secure enclaves? What's their term?
Well, that's
Yeah.
a particular vendor term. We must never use the word enclaves or enclaves
Okay.
because that's specific. Trusted execution environment is the preferred term for
Okay.
the actual thing. Confidential computing covers the space.
Mhm.
All right.
Sorry.
I'm gonna be right back, Dan. I'm gonna go flip over to the other one and explain how I got to this one. Since the link to this one wasn't actually sent out any place that I could find. But I got on through signing on to linuxfoundation.org and clicking the meeting join there. So I'll be right back. Actually, is there a way to
I
grab
had
this?
it as part of the meeting invitation
In,
for this one.
okay, I'll be right back. I got the URL here.
Okay. Talking about conferences, I've been last week to KubeCon. The good thing was that there were several sessions about confidential computing, mainly by Red Hat people. And there were some people talking about it, but most of the audience did not have a clue what it is. And the standard, yes, we heard about that, but tell me more. And then you know that they didn't hear about it before. So that's where we're trying to create more awareness. I was at one of the sessions of a rather big company that presented how they work with the federal market, and I went at the end and talked to one of their tech leads and asked them about using confidential computing to solve some of their problems. And that guy, which is maybe their top architect or something like that, told me that confidential computing is crap. He told me that it is something at the academy level and for the super paranoid people. I tried to make him talk with me for a little bit longer, but he told me this is what I have about what I think about it, and you understand that, and that's the end. So it's the first time that I got such a pushback from anyone about the technology.
So when you say it's at the academy level, do you mean do you mean that it's not sufficiently mature, or what?
No, he says that the level of paranoia that you need to have in order to consider using secure enclave. He is, yes,
Thank you. Very
is,
good.
yeah.
And he's working with the
not,
federal market?
yes, yes.
Whoa, well, he's not speaking to the right people then, because that is not the view of lots of federal people. But okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we actually are, yeah, this is recorded, so I can't really talk about it yet. But in a couple of weeks, we can disclose some of the stuff we are doing with governments and stuff. And so hopefully it's gonna, it should be good news.
Cool. Good.
Okay. Good chat at the outset of today's meeting. We had a little extra time as we were getting people adjusted to the new meeting link. Thanks, Dave, for shuttling between sessions there. So with that, I think we can get underway. Today, and somebody can always double check me on this, is November 16th of 2023. And
it is, you're right on this occasion.
Yay. We're in the Technical Advisory Council meeting of the Confidential Computing Consortium. And we are charged with accelerating the adoption of confidential computing, which is the protection of data in use and so forth. We abide by the Linux Foundation's antitrust policy notice, and you can go to their link to read more. And what we will be going through today is before you here on the screen. So as usual, we will recap minutes from last session. Lily has an update on the item that she's been running for the TAC objectives. Dave has a recap from the IAB meeting. And Kate will be joining us to talk about outreach. And then we have some new to some of you contributors to talk about a common API proposal that they are working on. And if we have time, we want to start dressing up our final scoring of what we're accomplishing in 2023 and any updates on the 2024 plans. Is there any other business people were expecting to cover today?
Just a quick update from me, if you've got a couple of minutes for it, but it's going to be very, very brief. Nothing structured. If that's okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
So let's do announcements, and well, that's its own thing, I guess. Throw that in there. And one thing that actually, I don't know if you could do a quick recap of the board meeting. I was unable to attend that while I was at the Linux Plumbers Conference yesterday.
Maybe Ben would be a good person to do that. That's right, Ben?
Sure. Yeah, it was a pretty good meeting. I would say the main thing that we needed to accomplish in that meeting, there were a lot of things to accomplish, but from my perspective, was approving our 2024 budget, which we went through. There was a bunch of questions, which were really good, and that budget was approved, and that includes the TAC budget as well.
Oh, and bad news possibly for people is I will be here for next year as well. My role was approved for next year as well. So
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Benjamin,
commiserations or something.
Congratulations. Benjamin, just a quick question. I had to leave because of my travel arrangements. Were the projects approved at the end?
The projects were not approved. We did not have, well, actually, Helen, correct me if I'm wrong, but we needed to have presentations from the two projects for the board, and we didn't have representation from the TAC to do so.
Yep, that and we lost quorum.
That's also true. We had quorum and then we lost it.
I don't think it was obvious that people needed to be there to present something.
I had asked because we had introduced the material in previous board meetings that we not have to have them present again. So I guess ultimately, if there was not a quorum at that point in the meeting, that's fine. But I don't want us to have to do unnecessary process in order to like double or triple approve things.
In that case, Dan, let's circle after the meeting, and we can talk about doing a vote via mail. Email.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And somebody was looking for a link to the minutes. Did you get that?
Hi, Dan. I left a message and I asked to if we can start reviewing the project proposal of ILET today.
Sorry, that was very faint. Were you saying that you were hoping to get a review of the ILET proposal?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is fair, and I'm sorry I did not get that posted sooner. So I wasn't quite sure if we would have you here today. Let's just do a quick straw poll if people are prepared to discuss ILET today. I think this has a hand raise feature somewhere, which I can't see while I'm presenting. Otherwise, if you're a voting member of the TAC and you just want to pop off of mute to say if you're prepared or not prepared to review ILET today. Not see one head shake, no.
Maybe in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not. Have we not put it off once already? I think we should really try to do it if we can. I think particularly it's difficult for to get to these meetings, and I think we should really try and do it if we can.
Yeah,
this is really
I
bad
agree.
time.
It's very late, and I'm sorry to have you join and have us not be prepared to review.
Okay, that's totally fine.
So why don't we pick it up the 30th? I agree. It's a more than fair request that we do it today. I just don't think that people arrived prepared because we didn't
Sure. Okay.
send out the.
I'm really
agenda.
sorry, Bodji.
Oh, that's totally okay.
I will owe you the beverage of your choice when we eventually meet up face to face.
There's some very expensive whiskies available. We should make sure that that's your choice, Bodji. Or nice champagne. I don't know.
Okay, sorry again about that. We will definitely hit it on the next meeting, which is the 30th. And why don't we just take a look at that now? We're gonna go a little out of order on the agenda, but we have all right. So we will do double duty with projects next time. We will we'll hit Islet on the 30th. And then we'll also be hearing a project proposal from Jörg Redel about the coconut SVSM. And so anyway, TAC members, please review the material that Buck Duck presented last session and be prepared to have the voting discussion about approving Islet at that time.
Dan, quick question. To schedule a tech talk, we just send you an email or Helen?
Yeah, or send it to the list. Pretty informal about that.
Great. Yeah, in December we may want to present what we work on.
Okay.
Now that we have ByteDance as members, we could have a TikTok tech talk. Of course, I love saying that.
Could you say that again?
That's
probably not. A TikTok tech talk.
Oh, you could say that again. I'm
Right.
impressed.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you.
This is very pleasing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I think we need to cancel the 21st if it is not already canceled. Just going to assume we will not get good attendance that week. So let's plan on formally canceling that if it's not already. And then we're really down to our last 2 meetings of the year. So these 2 projects next time, and then maybe concluding out our 2024 plans the following session. So if there's anything that you were urgently hoping to squeeze into 2023, you're down to the last couple meetings here.
Got it.
Okay, let's get back on track with the agenda. We do not have Giuseppe, I believe. Nathaniel? Nathaniel. Neither Eric Northup nor Shankaran. So I wonder, well, I guess between Mike or maybe the new person that we are looking to bring on hopefully soon, it would be great to see what the holdup is with some of our perennial absences here. But moving on, do we have Kafir or Catalin?
Catalin, I'm here.
Catalin, thank you for joining. Howard? I'm here. Dave Thaler is here, as well as Alec, and both Lily and Yash. Yes, yes. So that brings us to 4, if my 2-bit counting still works. 3-bit counting, maybe. So we do have quorum. That's of the voting members, but we are an open and collaborative organization here, so everybody is welcome to add your insights and your expertise to our discussions. If you haven't already introduced yourself to the community so that you know who we are, please feel free to pop off mute now and let us know what your name is, your preferred pronouns. what company and or geographic location you are joining from, and what your particular technical interest is with confidential computing.
I have done it before, but let me do it again. I'm Rian. I joined Aleph and would be part of Ben and Helen's team, helping to sort out things in the TAC and all over at CCC. I am joining at the moment from America, but I normally will be joining from South Africa, roughly the same time zone as the UK.
Thank you for joining again. Glad to have you in the team. Anybody else?
Maybe I get started. My name is Wenhui Zhang, Wenhui Zhang, Zhang. I'm from ByteDance TikTok. We are very interested in enabling confidential computing in our cloud platform. Yeah.
Well, it's great to have you here.
Thank you. I think we have lots of teammates here. Ken, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, can you hear me? Sorry. Yeah, this is Ken Lu. I'm from China. So from Intel company. So I'm very interested in enable the computational computing for cloud native architectures. Yeah, nice to join this discussion.
It's great to have you here, Ken. Ken and I work together off and on within Intel. So not a stranger to me, but great to have you in our CCC meeting today.
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Ruoyu, and I'm also from Intel. I'm from Ken's team, and I'm joining from China. I'm also very much interested in enabling the confidential computing in our whole community, and help to promote this thing to the others who's interested in it. Thank you.
Also great to have you on. Thanks for joining. All right, well, I think I recognize everybody else on the list. So if you later realize that you wanted to introduce yourself, feel free to jump in at any time or introduce yourself in the next meeting. So we're going to go on to the TAC minutes now, and then action item reviews and a recap on the IAB discussion. So the main things.
Just a quick suggestion. It would be nice if people added the company name in their names, so that we can actually have an idea of which companies are represented and track this. Just a suggestion.
Yes, we do keep meeting minutes, and it will be easier for people helping with the minutes if you do put your company designation in your Zoom name. Feel free to just put it into the chat list too, whatever you prefer. And if there's anything else that Helen or Ben or Rian would make it easier for you all when you're taking minutes, feel free to suggest things. Okay, so what we went over last time was primarily, we had a quick FYI, I think from Chris, on a new US executive order, people to take a look at. We heard the project presentation on ILET, which we then failed to advertise on the mail list this time for our members to be ready to vote on. So one more apology for that. There was the response to the IAB statement on attestation. So we reviewed and voted upon that. And then we heard a tech talk on incorporating confidential computing and the software supply chain. I think those were the main topics, but if you want to pop over to the pull request itself, you can see all the details. Thanks to Yash for being prepared beforehand and having reviewed it. So I just had one little thing that we had the vote separated in time from the discussion on the IAB response. So when it did hit the minutes, it hit the minutes at the right part, but without maybe clear context for future readers of the minutes. Get this on one screen here. Okay, so I see that's already fixed up, so I'm good with that. Any other changes? All right. Any voting members of the TAC who wish to oppose the minutes or wish to abstain from the minutes? Okay, hearing no abstention or opposition to the minutes as they are recorded on GitHub, they are passed. Action item review. So we've been carrying an action item to find a mentor and not really trying terribly hard to do that in the last couple of meetings. And with a couple more projects now in the queue, I think we need to rethink the mentor process. So let's say it is on me to put an issue onto our GitHub repo to start some thinking on that. All right, Kate will be joining us soon to talk about the outreach goals. So we completed our action item to sync up on what we wanted to do with that and schedule Kate to be here today. And then Lily, last time Yash said that Lily would be available to present today on the cross-project meeting survey. So maybe we can hit that right now.
Yeah, I am available whenever. Should I present slides?
Okay, why don't we do that right now?
Alrighty.
Stop presenting to give you a chance to do that.
All right, I'm gonna try and have this share my screen, which is always an interesting thing to attempt. Let's just try this one.
That's working.
All right. Success. Let me try and get this into a slideshow. All right, are we all good?
Yes.
Okay. So Eric Voigt and I have been working on this goal. We wanted to basically get some input from the current projects about their levels of awareness of the other projects and their kind of satisfaction with how much communication is happening. So he and I put the survey together, and then I had sent it out and collected some responses. They were sort of open-ended, so it's not super quantitative, but I kind of did my best to try and tally things. So first of all, we had 7 projects when this was sent out. That's our total number. 5 of the projects did respond. 1 did not respond, and 1 project is not currently maintained. They don't have a point of contact. So we basically have 5 responses. So the first question was about known overlaps. I made this diagram. It's a little messy. I'm sorry. So basically, each of these arrows represents kind of a different thing. If you see up here on the left, this solid green arrow from Veracruz to Verazon, this was the one dependency that was mentioned. So Veracruz is using Verazon as one of their dependencies. These other green arrows here are potential dependencies that were mentioned. And the Verti project is still in gray here because it wasn't included at the time in the survey. And then there were a lot of orange. So this is projects that mentioned similar goals between them and other projects. Orange is kind of all over the place. A lot of the projects recognize that they have similar goals to the other projects. And then the purple is kind of like the desired connection. So if a project mentioned wanting to be connected to some of these other projects, I put that in purple. Yeah, I just kind of threw this together, so hopefully it's kind of easy to interpret, but any questions on this one?
Just a question. I think that TAC recently voted on was it Rust SBDM? And I'm wondering if the survey was also sent to them.
It was not sent to them yet. We had sent this out a couple months ago, but we can
it would
send
be
it to them.
yeah, it would be useful, I think, to send it to them now, just because this picture here, once you add in the arrows from Rust BDM, it will become even more interesting. So that's why I'd suggest
Yes.
augmenting this by sending it to them now.
Okay, yeah, good idea. I can do that. Any other questions so far?
Because I think, if I remember
do you
right,
mean
I think the
horrifically
Rust...
complex?
No, I think what I just remember, because there's out of the green arrows on here, there's only one current dependency in the solid green, which is the Veracruz to Great Online. If I remember right, Rust SBDM said they have current dependencies on both Grameen and Open Enclave SDK. And so that's why I mean it gets more interesting because there's already existing dependencies, if I remember right.
Nice. Chris has a hand up, and I think maybe Mike was also talking and I didn't hear. But Chris, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Yeah, I put my comment in the chat too. If the board approves the certifier framework, that also leverages OE, Keystone, and Grameen.
Nice. Yeah.
Actually,
so
maybe
it
that's
sounds
the one
like
I'm thinking of. Maybe that's
Okay.
probably what I'm thinking of, is those dependencies, not Rust SBDM. So, but send it to both, right? Because even the ones that are pending votes would be interesting to collect data from. So.
yeah, so there's some room to include the new projects in here. And I agree that would be good to do.
Mike,
and Islet as well.
As I say, Islet folks take note. Yeah.
Islet, the certifier framework also leverages Islet.
Super. Yeah.
This
so
is
we'll get
really
some more
good. I'm
arrows
really
on
pleased
here.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Yeah, so we had some good connections mentioned there. Question 2 was about familiarity with other projects. So we had one responder say not very. We had 2 that said I'm familiar with some projects, or maybe only the projects where I know I have an overlap. And we had 2 responders say they are basically familiar with the general goals of other projects, but not any new developments or roadmaps. Different people kind of phrase this differently. I think the other responder said they keep up with new projects, but if an older existing project changes their direction, they wouldn't necessarily know about that. So we'll see how that can turn into an action item based on this and one of the other questions. Satisfaction with the opportunities to connect with other projects. We should have maybe done this as 2 questions, because people answered mostly about the opportunities that they've had and almost nobody talked about their satisfaction. My read on it is not that they're unsatisfied, but rather they didn't know how to evaluate that, maybe because it's not a huge priority. So 3 responders say they had not much opportunity. One said there's been some, and another said only with pre-existing overlaps that they know about. So there's not a lot of activity happening here in terms of projects connecting with new projects or figuring out new overlaps or intersections. So yeah, most people didn't talk about satisfaction. One did mention being able to attend the Confidential Computing Summit, or sorry, not being able to attend the Confidential Computing Summit. I noted that down because it is an opportunity to have really good discussion. They didn't mention why, so I'll follow up with that in one of the later slides about what we can do to evaluate that. Virtual meetings and an in-person event were mentioned as positive opportunities that one of the responders had taken advantage of. Oops. Communication channels. So we asked them you know, what would you like to see as a communication channel that you don't have right now? As you can see, the responses were sort of spread out. There wasn't a big cluster. The only thing that more than one responder said was that they would love to see a newsletter or some kind of update about the project roadmaps. So this harkens back to one of the previous slides about responders who are familiar with the general scope, but not any kind of updates. So one of the action items that I took from this is that it might be good to have a newsletter, but also one of the responders said that they think there already is a newsletter. I'm not actually sure. So again, I logged
there
that
is
down.
a newsletter. It's
Okay.
kind of generally outreach led. We should make sure there's more connection, but yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, so newsletter or no ideas, virtual meeting, offline meeting, chat. Different projects seem to want different things, and at the scale that we're at right now with only 5 projects, that presents a difficulty. So that was my takeaway from this one. Would you like to be connected with any specific projects? 3 projects said not really. One of them named one other project, and one of them named 2 other projects. And someone did propose a how to contact list for the current project maintainers, which seems like a good idea. And maybe this does exist somewhere, but it's not very easy to find. So I think they even mentioned, yeah, you can click through the websites and try and find like contact through each of the project websites, but they're all different and it's not very clear how to do that. So I think some people just give up. Round table. Would you be interested in participating in a round table? So 2 projects said yes, 2 seemed skeptical, and 1 said yes, maybe when we're working on a new project, which I wasn't totally sure how to interpret. But there did seem to be a preference for one-on-one conversations from some of the responders. And one responder noted that they'd be interested in this only if there are relevant topics and if it's a friendly time zone when this event happens. So this is again tricky because even though 2 people said yes, that's not exactly a round table. That's more of a one-on-one discussion. So we can go now to the takeaways. My main takeaway was that we only have a handful of projects, and because their preferences and needs differ, it's really hard to get sort of the quorum or momentum behind a specific activity. So at this scale, one-on-one conversations might be best. Other opportunities for group conversation could be scoped to, you know, things like Confidential Computing Summit or other in-person conferences. And we should definitely make it easy for project maintainers to attend those. I don't know why one of the responders mentioned not being able to attend. So I don't know if they didn't have time, didn't have money. If it was like a location or visa issue, we should make sure that we unblock those things where relevant. Second takeaway that I had is desire to stay current with other projects, but people not really being able to do that. So the newsletter, making that really accessible and obvious where to find it. And perhaps an as needed contact list for the project maintainers that they can consult, or even a chat channel, which we've talked about before and kind of fizzled on that because there weren't a lot of projects that wanted to use it, but it did come up from one of the responders. Other takeaway, this didn't seem like a huge priority for many of the projects, but there was some interest. So I think as the CCC, we can try to meet the interest that exists, maybe generate more interest. And lastly, the common goals were pretty well recognized between the projects, even if they didn't have specific dependencies, at least among the projects that were currently surveyed. So My main takeaway from this was that we should onboard more projects, because the more we have, we'll have a critical mass to have different projects that all want to communicate in a certain way, and that'll make it easier for them to do so, if that kind of makes sense. Oh, I had action items. But before we go through that, actually, questions or comments are welcome.
Just a question that is, do we need an action item? You mentioned that there was one project that didn't respond and one that's not being maintained. Are you allowed to say which projects those are? And I'm wondering if there's any actions the TAC should take to help those projects.
So when we sent out the survey, NARCS didn't have a point of contact. I haven't checked back on that. That's the one that was considered not maintained. That's probably like too harsh terminology, but we just didn't have a point of contact for them. So if that's updated, I can try again. Just let me know.
I think Richard Zach has been. I'm not sure he still is, but that's who I go to if I get questions.
Okay. Yeah, we can try him.
And what about which project has not responded yet?
Grameen did not respond. I don't think it's for any particular reason, but I did send it out a couple of different times and sent a little set of nudging reminders.
Okay, just making sure there's no action that the TAC needs to take to like assign a new mentor or schedule any or project review or something like that. But it sounds like we're okay there. Thanks.
Yeah. Other questions?
This is really helpful stuff, Lily. Thank you. I mean, one of the reasons we're trying to hire TCA, as you're aware, is to help with some of these issues. So thank you very much indeed for doing that. And I know you've been involved with some of the interviewing of that, and I guess that's hopefully you've used this information as part of that. So thank you so much. Really appreciate this. Really useful.
Yeah.
When you said we should recruit more, sorry, Karen.
No, I definitely I see the need for it. I think it would be great to have an architect for the community. Sorry, go ahead.
The other thing I was going to say is when you say we should we should onboard more projects. The other way of looking at that is that it gives us exponential complexity growth. But I think that's probably better than the alternative of not having any crossover. So I think we should. I agree. But we should be aware that it's not a cure for all ills. That's all.
Yeah, certainly not. It's mostly just when I saw maybe one or two projects are interested in, having a virtual event, for example. If we had maybe 50 projects, that would turn into 20 instead of 2 or something like that. And then it would be enough membership in one of those events to make it kind of worth holding. So these are my action items. I do want to connect the projects that specifically requested that to specific other projects. The newsletter, I don't know who can take point on kind of refreshing that and or the contact list.
So again, I see this as an sorry.
Hi, it's Kate from Outreach. I feel like I came in at the right time, but I just joined like a few minutes ago, so I didn't really get to listen to all your presentation, but just a couple of things that caught my eyes, that the newsletter and the contact list. So in terms of the newsletter, I can totally see that that's a need, and it's easy to work that out. We haven't communicated, I think. Contact list though, can you clarify what that means? What are they looking for?
Yeah, one of the responders had mentioned that it would be easier for them to connect with other projects and find overlaps and things like that if they could easily access a list of project maintainers from the other CCC projects, because right now I think the easiest way to do it is to go through the CCC site projects page and then go to each individual project's website and then try to find a contact through there. But that's a lot of clicking. They're not, they don't all have it in the same place. Some of them might not have a contact at all. I don't know. So just an easy list distributed to the project maintainers, project mentors themselves, so that they can consult with others if they have a question or comment, or they just want to reach out and talk about, like, do we have an overlap? They might not know how to do that, and it takes 5 minutes of digging, so they probably just like don't do it.
Right. Do they ever utilize Slack? Do you all utilize Slack at all?
One person mentioned wanting to have a project specific chat forum, and in my mind that would be Slack. And I think I've brought up whether we should have a project specific Slack channel a few times, but there just wasn't enough interest on that. I think that would be another way to achieve the same thing. So yeah, I have a question mark on that one, because I think I don't know how much we want to prioritize that. I could certainly see it being useful.
Yeah, I can see it like two parts. So people that genuinely wanting to learn more about the project coming from outside, I can see that they dig in the website and trying to find a contact list. For within our like projects though, they should be well connected, in my opinion. They should not have to like hunt for information to reach the other. So that's definitely something that we need to fix.
Yeah, that was the takeaway.
Okay, thank you.
The last one is just make sure there aren't blockers for travel. So I know we have a fund already to help project maintainers get to these conferences up to a certain limit. So I think we just need to make sure that they know about that and figure out if there's any other reason that they're not attending. And that was basically it. No other questions or comments, then that concludes the survey presentation. Thanks everyone for listening.
I really appreciate running that down. I know it's very difficult to get the attention of maintainers. And that had to be quite a bit of effort to get their attention to respond to this, so that we know how they're doing and can do better for them. Okay, well, we will switch back to the regularly scheduled program now. Slides back up for you. All right, you are all now looking at the action item review slide or my bank account. Okay, I see a thumbs up from Dave, which could have been either. So the last thing I had on here is what we already mentioned. We're in the last couple meetings of the year, and we're gonna cancel the one that is close to Christmas and New Year's. All right, so we'll be talking to Kate in a few minutes, but the next agenda topic we have is on the IAB recap. And for those who do not know Dave Thaler, I just quickly pulled together a couple statistics. So Dave was the TAC chair for us for the very small bit of 2019 where the CCC existed, I think, and then for the 3 following years. And I just looked in the TAC repo, and if you look for Dave's sign off, it appears 279 times. Dave is responsible for better or worse for a good deal of the governance structure that we have here. And if you're wondering why I'm mentioning all of this historical reference to Dave and his huge impact on the Confidential Computing Consortium, I will leave that to Dave to say here as part of his IAB recap, even though it has nothing to do with the IAB. Maybe.
All right, so thank you, Dan. Yeah, I didn't know you were putting that on there, but yeah, I appreciate that. So my announcement is that as of yesterday, after 25 years at Microsoft, I've retired from Microsoft, and so I am no longer a TAC voting member as of this call. And so the TAC voting member is now Alec, who was the alternate before. So I am here to report out, but I am actually not a member of the TAC. So thank you for allowing me to join as a guest today. Yeah, so I've been doing IETF stuff for almost 30 years and Microsoft stuff for the last 25 years. I've been in the hospital at least twice so far this year, and I've got surgery coming up for my ankle. Those of you may remember earlier this year, I broke my ankle and I had like a knee scooter that I had in the background and it was on crutches and stuff. And so anyway, so I am moving into a private consultant role and just doing the things that I enjoy, but I don't have Microsoft's name on my badge anymore. So anyway, that's the big announcement and why probably Dan decided you wanted to thank me. So I appreciate that. I will still be continuing to do some open source and standards work, although a lot more of my time is now focused on BPF and less so on security and confidential computing. You may remember I recently gave the tech talk on the relationship between BPF and confidential computing. And so I've been doing a bunch of stuff in the IETF and the open source projects and stuff there. So a lot more of my time is shifting. And I plan to continue on those things, just not on behalf of Microsoft, not on behalf of anybody else, unless I'm open for like contract work or something, if it's something I need to do. But otherwise, I might be like Mike and write a book or something, who knows? So anyway, so I am retiring from Microsoft, but not retire from, technology in general. All right. Anyway, that's my announcement. Happy to answer any questions, but I put on the agenda the IAB retreat discussion, or the IAB response discussion. Be like Mike, yeah. Okay. So the 4th through the 10th was IETF, and the IAB was there. And thank you to the TAC. I was on vacation for the 2 weeks before that, and so I actually didn't see the final version of the IAB response until I arrived in Prague after it was voted in. So thanks to all of those who did final last edits and stuff on it. I still agreed with it, and so the Tuesday of that week, the IAB held a meeting that they had invited everybody who had provided feedback that was present on site to be in a meeting to discuss with the IAB themselves. The TAC statement, they had that in hand. And in fact, got posted online with a live link during the meeting because I reminded them it was still, we were still waiting for it to appear on the live site. And so their secretary person, the equivalent of their PM, did it during the meeting. There was the people attending. Hank is on the call. Hank was there. Thomas Fossati was there. Thomas, for those of you who don't know, is one of the co-chairs of the CCC Attestation SIG and part of the Verizon project. So he and Hank and I were there sort of as CCC participants. At the time, I was a TAC voting member and approved the statement. And so I said that I was, one of the hats that I was wearing there was as the equivalent of a liaison person from the CCC to the IAB in case it was follow-up questions on it. I was also wearing my other hat, which is as a co-author of the RATS architecture document, and somebody that provided personal feedback on the list to them. But I would say there was 2 halves of the meeting. One half was the public meeting, meaning the one that all of us were at, and then they had a second half of the meeting, which was IAB only, and the CCC statement was on the latter half. So I did not get to hear their discussion of the CCC statement itself. The first half of the meeting was just Q&A, trying to figure out what the IAB meant and listening to any feedback and any clarifying questions. And they were having a closed session for which they'll post the minutes later on. And I just checked, and the minutes are not up yet. Probably everybody's taking a break after being at IETF for 24 hours, 24/7 for that week. But I can talk about how the first part went. But whether they will respond to us, whether they actually revise the statement and stuff, is things that were suggested during the first half of the meeting, and they were going to make some decisions during the second half. And I don't know what they decided since they haven't reported out. So I can only report on how the discussion went, but I can't report on what decisions they're making. Okay. And I see Hank is on the call, and so if I forget anything, Hank, feel free to jump in. But so that was how the meeting was organized. I would say there was more non-IAB folks present than the IAB folks. present. So I'm thinking there was probably about 20 people in the room, I think. The IAB consists of something like 13 members. Not all of them were present. Just to give you an idea, there's probably less than 10 IAB and more than 10 non-IAB. But again, Thomas, Hank, and I were 3 of them, but it also included the RATS working group chairs in the IATF, as well as some of the other authors of attestation documents and so on. And so if I were to summarize the feedback, the IAB was mostly in listening mode. I'd say they were fairly on the defensive because they knew they'd been beat up and that they got some stuff wrong. They did get maybe one thing right, which was the IAB statement was originally written in response to the W3C's the proposal to the W3C, which has since been rejected by the W3C. Okay, so they felt that one of the points of making the statement in timely fashion and then rushing it or whatever was to have that impact. They had that impact, and so that part was maybe successful in getting that particular proposal not accepted by the W3C. But that's not what we were there to talk about, right? We were talking about what's the broader impact on confidential computing and everything else that was kind of outside their scope. And so they asked lots of questions like, if we retitled it, what would a better title be? I'll get to the main point in a second here, but first I wanted to say what the types of feedback was, and then I'll explain what the IAB explained what they were thinking, right? Because a lot of it was in the what were you thinking kind of tone, right? And I was actually surprised once I found out what they actually meant, okay? And so I'll get to that. So I'd say there was 3 types of discussion that were came up. One was problems with terminology, okay? Which we pointed out in ours about the problems with attestation and so on. There was, and I'll talk more about that one because it turned out the biggest issue was actually a terminology problem. So I'll come back to that one because I want to spend some time on that one. The second one was problems with scope, okay, right? Trying to target one thing and having unintended side effects like, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Or if English isn't your first language, that just means going too broad and making a statement that applies to unintended things and having unintended consequences. And we talked about that in our response, right? And so examples there is what they were trying to accomplish is well, okay, let me go back to the terminology. Their biggest terminology point that actually surprised me. Nobody that other than the IAB expected this to be true. So when they said risk of attestation and they talked about open internet services, okay, this term appeared a couple times in there, but they never actually defined the term open internet services. They actually had a very surprising definition of what they meant when they said open internet services. Because when we went around, everybody else says, well, that's not what it means to me. Here's what open internet services means to me, right? To the rest of us, it means, well, wherever I am in the world or on whatever device I am, I can access my bank, I can access my website or whatever. I can access, the sites, no matter who it's not restricted to like only people from a certain company or whatever. And so what they actually meant was their definition of, and this is surprising, of open internet services, what they meant was things that intentionally do no authentication. Things that intentionally do no authentication. Now, if you think about confidential computing, we want authentication for almost every use case, okay? So that means that their original intent was something that applies to almost 0 use cases of confidential computing. There are a couple of anonymous cases for confidential computing, right? Granted. But when they said open internet services, what they really meant was unauthenticated internet services, things that are intended to be accessible without knowing to the general internet without having any authentication, knowing who they are. And their statements about risks of attestation for things that do not want authentication. Okay. This was, everybody's like, what? You meant that?
It's a pity there's no words like unauthenticated services they could have used, right?
Exactly. So when they were asking, what do we want the title to be? Okay, that's why they were asking, because clearly nobody other than the IAB from any community that provided feedback had guessed that that's what they meant. Okay. And so that's what I mean by problems of scope, is if you want to make a statement about unauthenticated services, I mean, I did point out that, they can take a position there. It just means that, because you can't get, malware defense strict without attestation, right? If they were to make a statement that the corollary of malware is okay for unauthenticated services only, and malware is okay for that, that's a controversial stance, but they could take that position and maybe defend it or whatever. But I don't think they wanted to word it that way, but that did come up, right? And so anyway, so that was the big problem in scope. And so clearly they got that wrong when communicating, and they need to figure out what to do to communicate that better. But if they were to communicate that better, and if they would have said unauthenticated to begin with, you can imagine that we as the TAC would have had a much different response than the response that we had, right? And so when they're going to be processing the CCC response, they're going to look at it in that light to say, well, this is kind of interesting, not really what we intended, right? It's kind of, my guess is how they'll interpret it. And they'll try to figure out how to, whether they update their statement or whatever, such that the confidential computing response, my guess is it'll be kind of out of scope if they declare it as being unauthenticated. We could still have a discussion of unauthenticated scenarios for confidential computing, and that would be an interesting discussion too. But that would be more of a niche case, right? Almost all of the confidential computing scenarios all of us care about are things that require authentication, right? So that was the problems in terminology. The problems in scope, just to double click on that. The things that they were worried about is for unauthenticated cases where you want anybody to connect, what they're worried about, and this part kind of came through, we guessed this, right? And I think the text that we put together, thank you, Chris, actually acknowledged this is, if you want to constrict which implementations or which pieces of hardware somebody is allowed to use, then that's what they're worried about. They want it to be open to other implementations. Okay, so when they say open internet services, that new entrants to the space can be accommodated, right? Another implementation of a client can be accommodated, for example. But attestation is not the only thing that's not a new problem, right? Anything that's a proprietary extension or anything that's an undocumented extension that gets special behavior. If you go back, even special user agent strings, right? There's plenty of websites that said, if you use this user agent string, we'll give you the fancy content, right? And then whether that's well-known, documented, public, whatever, that would be an interesting scope. So when they ask what would be an interesting, what would be a better title for it, I said, well, that depends on what your goal is. If your goal is to say, for unauthenticated services, don't constrict the implementations, then attestation shouldn't even be the title, right? So anyway, so there was some discussions of scope that came up there that other people weighed in on too. And so what they do with that, unclear, because this was the listening session. And then the third part was about problems with process. Go ahead. If you got, before I get to problems with process, go ahead, Chris. You got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, I agree that even if they make that definitional change, it's a pretty controversial stance to take, and it forces you to give up a lot of protections. But also, if you just read the statement and substitute, I put it in the chat here, take a look at this sentence here and substitute unauthenticated services and see how much sense that whole sentence makes. It seems internally inconsistent, even so.
Exactly. So that's why I said they could make that statement and we probably wouldn't have a stricter reaction on behalf of confidential computing per se, right? Because all the normal, all the mass market scenarios that most people are in do require authentication. We wouldn't have had as strong of a reaction anyway. But a lot of us do attestation stuff in general. And so I agree with you, Chris. And so that's why I said they could make that statement. It would still be controversial, right? But remember, the IAB is not it only is like 13 individuals, and so it's a consensus of 13 technical experts that are broad across the industry, but they don't hold any weight, right? Other than by making recommendations on behalf of the IAB, right? So it's not like they create standards, right? The IETF does that, and here we saw the IETF, including the working group, the RATS working group that they pointed to in the statement, all disagreed with the statement, right? And so. So anyway, but other organizations outside the IETF do sometimes pay attention to IAB statements, like I mentioned in the W3C, right? It did have the intended effect of the W3C. So anyway, so our response, I think, was really good for us to do. Thank you for pulling stuff together in a short period of time. I think our response had the desired effect, even if theirs didn't. Problems with process, the RATS chairs were the ones that gave them a hard time because they did not have expertise in RATS, but they made statements pointing people to RATS that the RATS working group themselves disagreed with. And so the RATS working group chairs gave them a hard time for not consulting the RATS working group chairs or anybody in the RATS working group, right? The IAB did this without any consultation of people they were even pointing to say to participate in, right? And so Hank and Thomas and I didn't, but the RATS chairs did give them a hard time about that one. Because the IAB currently does not have anybody that has the expertise around the whole remote attestation. They do have expertise around the Privacy Pass working group, which is relevant. And so I think this was written by the folks that had Privacy Pass expertise. And that also generated a discussion about Privacy Pass and RATS not talking to each other enough because they are relevant to each other, and maybe some ways to fix that. I don't know if Hank, if you have any more on that one, since I'm not familiar with Privacy Pass, but I'll just pause for a second in case, Hank, you want to say anything about Privacy Pass? If not, I'll go on. Hank is still on, right? Yeah, Hank is still on. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm on a train station walking.
Okay.
So I'm mostly listening. So what you said is basically true, that only I think a subset of the IAB really had an interest phrasing this. That might be one of the reasons why actually some IAB members left during the meeting. Yep. Yeah, so the defending part mainly I think was motivated by Privacy Pass, and they kind of refer to the RATS architecture, but now it might seem that we should talk to them more, maybe on the working group level even. So yeah, so this is what be my comment, but unfortunately I have to run to another train. Sorry.
All right, thank you, Hank. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there was anything else that came up. I guess later in the week, there was the IETF, there was a security area directorate. I should mention, midweek the IAB had a plenary meeting, an IAB open meeting that they have like invited talks and things, and so that's usually where they give their report out to the community. And so when they gave out the report out to the community of recent events, the CCC response was listed on their slide with a link, and so they basically advertised it to the entire IETF, and so good for us. Give some visibility, yeah. There was a security area directorate meeting, so Dan, feel free to call time because otherwise I can just report on IETF stuff. I don't know how pressed we are for the agenda today. So
yeah, no, that's probably a good call. We do have Kate and
okay, all right. So let me don't report on the IETF stuff, but any other questions about the IAB statement? Because now the ball is in their hands for them to decide what to do. They may have already decided and just not done it yet, given that people usually take a week of vacation after IETF. So, and IETF went until the 10th. So this is they're probably still out.
So we had some discussion, the meeting that we voted on this, whether this was a sort of a more direct statement than the CCC has produced before. And I think some people may have been a little uncomfortable with the directness of it since we haven't done that in the past. Whereas other people probably could have felt even more direct. So did you have a sense from the interaction with the IAB whether the tone of our response was appropriate?
I do not have any feedback on that because they did not talk about. They were informed about the IAB, about the CCC statement, but they did not bring it up because I don't think they had the internal discussion amongst themselves, and so I don't think they wanted to communicate out until they had some internal agreement. And so, as Hank mentioned, there was probably 3 people on the IAB that were involved. My guess is there are 3 people that were actually talking in the meeting, which tells me probably, just because I've been on the IAB for like 11 years, I know how the internals of the IAB statements work. There's probably 3 people that were involved in the crafting the text and 13 people voting on it. Not unlike how ours worked, although probably more people provided some input on things, right? So one person took the pan lead, just like Chris did on ours, right? And so my guess is they didn't have internal consensus as to what to say.
Okay.
So my own opinion is I think the tone was fine. Meaning I was on the IAB for 11 years. If this style of stuff would have come in when I was on the IAB, it would not be surprising. This would be normal.
Great.
So well done to Chris and everybody else who contributed.
Yeah. thank you again, Chris, for all the work on that and everybody else who contributed in there and kept engaged.
That was a team effort, and I'm really happy that you were able to represent the issues in the meeting itself. So thank you, Dave.
All right, well, we will move on to Kate then, and I will stop sharing, but I will just say once again, thank you to Dave for all of the work in creating what we have before us today with the CCC. And personally, I've appreciated the mentoring of how to operate amongst the CCC and the IETF and all the other lessons that I've learned from you along the way the last few years here. So I will personally miss having you in our meetings and in all the work products that we put together.
Yeah, can I also say I think as the only surviving member of the initial TAC meeting who's here today, apart from Dave, thank you so much for all your service and everything you've done and how you set this up and the process and the culture. Really appreciate it. You've done a great job, and yeah, hopefully we'll our paths will cross. We can have a beer or something at some point. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
All right. Am I up?
Yes. Sorry,
Okay.
I heard a different voice come up and I wasn't sure. So yes, Kate George, our newly elected outreach chair for the coming year here, is here to talk about outreach goals. And since a lot of what we do on the TAC really overlaps a lot with outreach, we wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page of where we're doing work and what the effort is behind that. So I will stop sharing so that Kate can present if she would like. Otherwise, feel free to do things verbally too.
All right. Thank you. And I should have come to this meeting more often because just today, I've learned a lot. There are a lot of overlaps and we can leverage same help here. So is this right format right now? Do you all see?
Yeah. Yes, you can see it.
Okay. So okay. First of all, I'm Kate. I'm with Intel. I've been coming to CCC at outreach meeting since beginning of this year, and I started working as vice chair starting May-ish. And I've learned a lot throughout the year, and I'm so thankful to take on the chair position for the coming year. There had been a lot of learning from my own personal side and also just observing throughout the year. There are some goals that I wanted to achieve and help lead the outreach committee with other committee members. So, and I am so glad to be connected to the TAC now, as I see a lot of leverage here. So I just a real quick up. This is the strategy that I presented to the outreach team as well as the governing board. We recapped this quick summary of the 2023 activities. We had a lot of engagement and activities around 2023. We were at many events. We did webinars and blogs and newsletters, and the big milestone I would say was definitely the website launch and the Wikipedia page launch. So our team was responsible for that, and we executed that project. Some highlights is that, like I mentioned, in events, we were very active with the speakership and sponsorship. And we also hosted first member happy hour at CC Summit. We hope to do that again. And just generally, we had a lot of visibility and event participation increased by our new executive director, Mike. So I'm very thankful for that. So this is the summary of outreach events and activities throughout 2023, just for your information. And I'll go over a little bit in more detail. This is the event that was recommended by the committee members, and by no means these are going to be all we will be involved in all of this, but what we're doing, what we're trying to do is go through all of this event that member mentioned that is important for us to be part of. And we want to identify by what type of audience are we targeting, what is the goal for going to or even engaging in this conference and whatnot, and what type of activation are we targeting, and what is the dollar investment and things like that. So we are evaluating, and I would love for any of you who are interested in giving your input, I would love to extend that as well to this team.
Yeah, so I just want to emphasize that when we're looking at places where the TAC does things and outreach has helped prioritize. These are the conferences that we think are influential. This is something that I suppose TAC members could give input into as the year goes on for additional conferences. But hey, here's a prioritized list of where you can get eyeballs for our joint work at the CCC. If we as project contributors and subject matter experts don't show up at the conference, it really doesn't matter so much that the CCC sponsored it, because there's nobody there saying anything.
Yep, exactly. So we want to really look at it from, a multiple different angle. Is this a well-known event that we must be part of? And if so, what is the audience? And determine the audience and how can we craft our messaging? Is this technical specific, very technical conference versus end user focused conference? So we need to kind of alter that messages, and and I'll cover it in a minute, but we're working to have a different messaging strategy for a different type of audience group. So our objective stays the same, and for outreach committee specifically, we are the marketing portion of the whole committee here. So we are responsible for anything that goes into outreach or external facing messaging and events and activation and things like that. It's all within our area, and that's what we'll be looking at. So some of the things that I wanted to highlight within our outreach team is that, just sponsoring doesn't, mean anything. And over the years, I've learned that just having the logo put on the website or just having booth space doesn't really give us the right ROI that we were looking to achieve. So really, even if we're going to just do that, we need to have a right plan and right reason why that we decided to do so. So we wanted to approach a more holistic and strategic angle in order for us to determine which activation, which kind of a presence we're targeting. And also going forward, we as y'all probably know, and you're all aligned, we're targeting more a different segment with a kind of different field in the industry. So not just to tech, but we want to expand our outreach in healthcare, finance, and government-related policymakers. So definitely, this is something that is on top of our mind and looking at when we are looking at events. So this is in consideration. And generally, we are here to advocate for the collaboration. And our job is to really educate and have an outreach part, like have a specific messaging for different audience groups, so they make sense for them. Because if it doesn't make sense, what it means if we can answer what it means for the audience that we're speaking to, then we didn't do a great job of preparing. So with that, we have decided these angles. So events, like I mentioned, we had a lot of activation. We've established already pretty good amount of, best known method and all of those things. We had a lot of learnings and we have a lot of plans already. But I would like to have a team specifically working on that. And Tech Insight actually break it into two parts. So one is truly the digital marketing, like external facing messagings, website maintenance, and all like social media, all things that has to do with the comms and external facing messaging. And the other part is the technical, like collateral document and marketing document where, either speaker can take away and then just easily plug into their slides, or creating a white paper, and things like that. So that would be fall under this category. And then lastly is I put it as a workshop. There were some idea came up within our committee that, maybe we should have some sort of a package or demo ready to be deployed at events, or we could host a webinar or things like that. And this, I see it, we can collaborate with projects here as well. So let me just go deeper into what our plan is. So at Outreach, we are creating 4 different SIGs. So in the past, we had, we've worked on all of these areas, but I feel like there needs to be some focused effort here. And then we are looking to have 1 lead for each SIG. So we will have 4 leads, and other members can be participants in this each SIG. And doesn't mean that they can't participate in other SIG. Obviously, these all, have to collaborate together. So but the intention is to have the lead to really focus on the things and projects that they're passionate about, that they want to pursue. These bullets are basically our recommendations, but by no means that they have to stick to it or anything like that. The leadership team will provide the guidance, but I want this to be like people feel empowered to lead these projects and decide and help shape the outreach roadmap together. So if I go a little bit deeper into each SIG, I feel like we have a great leverage point here between outreach and tech in events like Dan mentioned, and also the demo piece. I would love to work with the technical advisory person, the new person, and to connect the dot between us and the projects, really to leverage their expertise and potentially create a hands-on experience. And we could make a mini challenge, and we can deploy into just different events and developer conferences and things like that. I could totally see that happening. And other technical document, I know there are some of you also attend the outreach call, so I'm sure you will be part of this, but something that we can kind of leverage both effort here. And if we need some folks from the tech to give input in one of our doc, that's totally possible. And lastly, the web presence and marketing communication. Lily mentioned about the newsletter. There is some website reorganization is needing to be done. Just FYI, we are having the marketing lead or marketing project manager from Linux Foundation to help us really cohesively curate all of these areas. We have had the marketing support from the Linux Foundation marketing already, but it was more like a one-off, like social media consultant and retainer creative services. So it was divided and not connected. So, and I don't want to put that burden into just Ben and Helen. And I feel like, it's important to have the one person to oversight the whole execution. Outreach committee will set the guidance and set the roadmap, and then this person will be basically making sure that we are on track and making sure these are all updated cohesively. So with that, is there any other question?
Yeah, Yash over chat was asking about mentoring, and this is something you and I and a few other people had discussed in IMs and email messages, and so historically the TAC has funded what I guess might be better called internships than mentorships through the outreachy organization. Not to confuse people, we have an outreach team within the CCC, and then there is a separate organization external to the CCC that facilitates getting underrepresented people into open source, and they are called Outreach E with a Y.
And can I ask what specifically the membership, or mentorship? What exactly the question?
Yeah, so Yash is asking, is mentoring part of outreach or TAC?
Mentor, so I know we have explored that a little bit, Dan, like you mentioned. I believe that we can certainly work together on, in terms of that category, within the outreach committee, we have allocated for events section, 10% of our budget will go towards the DEI supportive events. And if anything that falls under that, and if you all need to go to some of the conference to meet the underrepresented folks or anything like that, we have a budget for that. And in terms of like, yeah.
Sorry, can I just give a historical view on what mentoring has generally meant in the CCC? We can always change it. It's generally meant having someone from Outreachy involved with a project, one of the open source projects of which are parts of the CCC, and for someone in one of those projects to work with them on tasks and goals associated with that open source project. So it's giving that mentee an opportunity to work on a real life open source thing and get their heads around technologies. And money has been given by the CCC and allocated to each of the projects to cover the costs of the outreachy thing. There are also opportunities, for them to travel to conferences maybe, but that's kind of a separate thing. So the actual mentoring thing is generally associated with a particular project.
Mm-hmm.
Is that helpful?
Yes. So on that note, actually, we discussed that we may use the Linux Foundation platform instead of Outreachy. So I honestly don't know how that went and how the decision should be making, but I believe the mentorship is owned by TAC. And if y'all need any help from Outreach team, the committee, to be able to help you with the finding the mentee and all of those, I mean, that's definitely doable. And
Yeah,
I'm not sure if that
a good split. So one of the other historical factors here is that when we were originally getting some of the initiatives together about how would we create an inclusive community for the CCC, Nick was one of the main contributors to that conversation. So even though principally what we want to do is connect maintainers and developers of our project with new contributors from outside the community, and that feels like a very TAC-oriented thing, a lot of the initiative came from Nick. So some of it ended up over in Outreach. And I like how Kate just put it, that I would like to think of Outreach as our recruiting arm for how we get new contributors in general. And that some portion of that will be people that we want to bring into structured internships, or maybe if there's other forms of mentorships that we can provide. Also, from a TAC perspective, when we're thinking about our goals for the coming year, I would like us each as TAC members to commit to some degree of mentoring or internship mentoring for 2024 as part of what we're committing to be active contributors to this part of the CCC. So each of you, please think about that, and we can maybe formalize that into our goals that we finish up in the last 2 meetings of the year here.
So do you all have a person or owner of the mentorship program? So ultimately, I know there was a chatter about changing the platform to Linux Foundation instead of Outreachy. Like that kind of a decision need to be made at somehow. Who would make that decision in your team?
Another very good question. So there again, Nick had really led the charge on this in the past. But I do think it is appropriate for one of us to take ownership of that and help make some of these decisions and guide the rest of us on the right platforms and mechanisms to do this.
Yeah, because when I look at it, like for us to even promote anywhere or, in any regards, we need to know, we need this person to really oversee this program, and when is the mentorship length, like period of time that we're going to be needing to commit, and so then that'll determine when we are going to need to go in outreach and when we need to plug that messaging into one of our activation and things like that. So I feel like that is needed. We don't want to definitely do the last minute thing.
Yeah. So if there's somebody who wants to step forward from the TAC now and offer to be the owner of mentoring and internships, I think that would be a fantastic role to play for the CCC, and a very visible one.
I can do that. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Someone
Yash
just
from the
nominated
TAC.
themselves. Yay.
Yeah. Hello.
Say that again, Yash, because I think you're both speaking at the same time.
I can volunteer to be that person.
That is awesome. I appreciate that incredibly. Thank you.
There you go. Okay, any other question? Should I stop share? Can't see the chat. No question.
Yeah, I was trying
Anyways.
to monitor. I think we got everything that was out there.
Okay, so this was basically to give y'all some visibility of what we're going to be trying to do and achieve next year. So you have some idea. Okay, so when you are working on something and you can, if you think of anything that, oh, this would be something that we can get a help from outreach team or whatever, I'm here. You have Dan, and we all meet pretty frequently. You have Mike comes to our meeting. You have Ben and Helen and everybody. So just keep that in mind, and we're all, not reinventing, but leveraging our help.
Yeah, and I think the thing to take away from here is that the outreach committee are not scary marketing people. They're actual real people who want to do the same stuff that we want to do. So let's see what we can, how they can use us, use the TAC people, and vice versa. So I'm both. Absolutely. Right. I try not to be either. Across them. Thank you.
Yeah, and then I feel like
she's just parachuted in here at the beginning of 2023 and is taking outreach by storm. So, but you probably won't find her scary.
There is a lot of opportunities just by remembering what Lily was covering earlier, and some project mentioned that they were not able to attend the CCS. Those type of thing I would like to know. I would like to kind of dig in what happened, and I'm sure it wasn't anything. It was probably very minor thing that we didn't communicate or we didn't really connect, whatever. It was probably very small thing, which we can easily fix. So that's why this is very important to be connected.
Mm-hmm. There was one other thing that I'm just remembering in chat, that somebody was looking for the spreadsheet of conferences. So if you can drop a link to that somewhere where people can find it.
We already have it and plug it in.
Oh, okay.
Helen is 10 steps ahead of you.
Always is. Okay, well, thanks again for that update, Kate, and
thank you.
For our next meeting, everybody, let's keep in mind these activities that are going on so that we can allocate our time to directly contribute on them and things like the conferences. Right. And chat on my end keeps telling me that there's one more message I can't see. So if somebody's trying to say something, feel free to pop off of mute. I think Zoom is just misbehaving though. So I will turn the floor over now to our next topic, which is something that came up. Sorry, the Zoom interface is causing me a little trouble right now. So there's a new topic that came up very recently over the last week about trying to get towards some common APIs for things that are important to us in confidential computing. And as you heard in the introductions today, we've got Zhang Wenhui and Ken and Royu available today to talk about that. So I will let them take over the presentation here.
Hi, do you want to share the screen? Like, yeah.
Yeah. Please go ahead. Yeah, you will share, or you want me to share?
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So okay, I will share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. So yeah. Okay. So I will give a quick introduction about the topic background of the topic. Then I invite Wenhui, also invite Jiewen here and Roy here, so we can introduce our proposal. So the name of this proposal is CC API, Computational Computing API, but maybe you dislike this because this name may be too big, right? So we can, after we go through the slide, we can think, brainstorming, so what's the final the name will be better, maybe the CC Trust API or CC Management API, whatever. So today we are talking about this one. So we come from Intel, and also Wenhui come from TikTok. So we have a lot of contributors for these topics and the sponsors from Intel. Okay, so the first two slides is about the background and the requirement and motivation. So Wenhui, could you quick introduce the motivation?
Yeah. So let me introduce like several use case scenarios of like a cloud native app on the Kubernetes in a CVM, and like in the real world, in the production world, it's not like an ideal world. Like usually people suppose like there's only one container running and one app running inside of one container instance, and one container running several containers running in one CVM. However, this is not the case in our production. So in a production environment, the runtime like usually like in one container, it support at least 3 tenants within one container instance. And these 3 tenants are usually like from 2 different parties, as you could see on the figure. Like one party is like from the CSP, cloud service provider. They will provide the sidecar and proxy, or you could call it an agent. And the other party is like the customer, the vendor's app. For example, it may be a database app, or maybe it's a mass app, like a model as a service app. So these tenants could include like the customer's applications, and the agent attendant, which is responsible for managing the life cycle of the process with the container, and a sidecar. And the sidecar is often a database service that supports the functionality of the customer's applications. So in a system where the agent service and the sidecar will interact with customers' applications, this is common for both the agent service, sidecar service, and the customer's applications to be multi-process. And these 3 tenants communicates quite often. So in our use case, of like both confidential database and model as a service deployments, we usually like as we described, we usually encompass multiple containers distributed across like several different virtual machines. When we deploy it, we found like there are like we found like when we deploy the confidential containers, we found like the deployment model will need attestation of the user space code. So one attestation, the stage 1 attestation is attestation of the VM environment. And the second attestation stage is like during the container launch time, we want the container to be integrity measured and also like attested. And the third part is like after the container is launched, then the application will be initialized. So during the time, the application, during the boot time of the application, the integrity and measurement should be measured and attested as well. So that's a different use case scenario in the in the binary as a service, or like should I say in like application as a service scenario. Could you go to another slide?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. So during like while we are trying to deploy these two applications and do support service as a cloud service provider, we found like there are two major pain points of the deployment. The first major pain point is like, you know, like as like a cloud service provider, we have like machines from Intel and we have machines from like AMD, and we also building our own ARM machines, which makes the situation very complex. And the current infrastructure as a service, which is IaaS, typically does not like shield these hardware differences. This might result in like different approaches to application attestation on various hardware platforms. For example, the Intel TDX supported attestation through the RTMR register. Additionally, like Intel also provides the IMA backend to RTMR, so like you could do like user space attestation. On the other hand, the AMD SEV SMP supports application attestation through the like VTDM interfaces and other like forms. So there's quite different, and it is hard for us to manage like attestation. We can't build attestation for like Intel and for like AMD, like building three like services all together in our cluster is a lot of like burden for us. And the second pinpoint is like, we want to support application use application attestation, like especially applications in the user space, for different like hardware vendors. And it requires a lot of like manual intervention by the users, and currently not supported by the solutions so far. So firstly, like the users need to manually analyze the TCBs, the application dependencies, and create the attestation policies specifically. And then they should ingest the application like policies into either like Kubernetes and or Linux. And there's currently no mechanism in Kubernetes or Linux supporting like inserting attestation specific policies. So this is hard. And furthermore, the interface solutions provided by the Intel, AMD, and also ARM like differs a lot. So the Intel supports the attestation through the IMA user space attestation through the IMA interface, while the AMD SEV SMP supports it through the HMAC update, and ARM supports it through the RSI interface. So we probably need like a unified like API for both on the southbound and on the northbound to support the attestation. Please go ahead, Ken.
Okay. Thank you, Wenhui's introduction on the background and the pinpoint. So as Wenhui said, we want to provide vendor agnostic and TCG compliant API, which provide an abstraction layers above the various confidential primitives, such as measurement, log code, for not only the attestation, but also the TCP measurement, right, for zero trust design. And we can, the goal is supporting multiple deployment environment from firmware, virtual machine, and cloud native. I will expand later why we cross different deployment environment. And we also want to provide the multiple languages support within the computational virtual machine get. So initially, the API definition, the the API structure is we have high-level API, unified API. When we have some common SDK to process, to produce, to consume, to access the not access, to process the measurement event log and the code. And we also have bottom-line SDK, such as firmware SDK, we have virtual machine SDK and cloud native SDK. They will help to produce this primitive according to different deployment environment and TCP. So I will expand in detail. So the problem statements. So as you know, as we mentioned, the diverse computational primitive to achieve zero trust design, the remote attestation process require signed evidence, aka code, and which reporting the integrated measurement and the event log originated from the root of trust, root of measurement, right? So event log is a piece of information, and all event log extended together and recorded to the measurement register, and then finally use the measurement register to generate the code. The code will be sent to the running part for the remote attestation, right? So as mentioned, Intel now we have CCEL computational computing event log table, ACPI table in memory, and we have RTMR runtime measurement register and the MRTD for static measurement for TTVF. So and finally the report, the CC report or the TTD report will send to the SDS to sign to generate the code for the full TDS based attestation, right? But Intel and AMD and maybe in future ARM will be support the VTPM in VTPM approach, right? So with VTPM, the VTPM has the TPM2 ACPI table and the PCR register and the TPM code. All of them are defined by the TCG spec, right? So so this is the today's situation, right? So the problem statement 2 is complexity deployment environment, because within the computational gas, your application can deploy it in the firmware as a firmware application, right? With small TCP, right? Such as you can embed your application in the TTCM, SVSM, or OMF, TDBF, right? And also, if your application is a traditional monolithic application, you can run in your monolithic application in the CVM OS directly without any modification, right? You can use IMA to achieve one-time measurement, right? Just like Wenhui said. And for the cloud native, you can deploy the whole clusters within the CVM, just like Constellation actually starts, right? Also, AKE and not our CSP provided similar solution. You can deploy the whole cluster within the computational VM. And for that, so you need to leverage the OS levels management and the class level management to calculate the whole TCP for the real capacity, right? But for cloud native cluster, you can achieve scalable design for your application. So it's still valuable for the talent to use to deploy the whole cluster in the CVM. So different deployment environment have different advantage and pros and cons and different TCP, right? So it's very complexity. So the proposal here is that we identify the computational primitive to achieve zero trust, right? So it includes the measurement register, event log table, and the code, right? This primitive, right? So we want to provide API, unified API and a common SDK to access this primitive and in multiple language. So the talent application can use unified interface to design their code without with this unified API and the common SDK. If their application moved from different environments, their code don't need to change, right? And also on the backend, we want to provide a firmware SDK. Actually, if you use your OMF, so Jevon here already designed the EFI CC measurement protocol to produce to consolidate Intel and AMD to produce the firmware-based management, right? So it's similar for TDCM, for SVM, we can provide the unified API to provide this computer primitive according to the firmware TCP. And for the CVM, so of course we should leverage the Linux IMA to do the user runtime management in the CVM OS. For cloud native, so now Intel we trying to create a new project CCMP to do the node levels, cluster namespace level, and the container level management for the computational clusters. So this is high level idea. So in detail, so from the API levels, so as you know, so we want to create this unified API and common SDK, but we need to follow some spec. For this primitive, either for Intel RTMR, CCER, or the VTPM, so we almost follow the TCT spec. So for example, for registers, so of course, so TCT defines not how PCR registers. Intel has only 4, but the format is a register, right? A hash, right? With different algorithm. And for even log table, so TPM2 TCT define the TPM2 table. So in the TCT TPM2 ACPI table specification, and we also so for RTMR and CCER, Intel CCER table is also follow the similar the compatible structures, right? So the only difference is the first record is PCR index, but for Intel RTMR CCER it is RTMR index, but the whole structure is compatible. So with current situations, we could create unified API, and this API follow the TCT spec standard to produce the primitive. So this is high-level ideas about the API definition. And for just mentioned, your applications maybe can be moved from firmware phase, monolith, CVM, or the clusters, right? So with different deployment, with the unified API, your code, at least zero trust code don't need to change bigger, right? Across different deployment. But also the backend SDK can provide the firmware TCP management, the VM TCP management, or the cloud native cluster TCP management according to your deployment environment, right? So so it means we not only provide the CC API and the common SDK, but we also provide the backend SDK to help calculate the TCP for different environment. Then you can use our reference or the SDK to quickly deploy your application in diverse environment. So this is all ideas discussed here. So is there any question?
Was that the last slide?
Yep, that's all from my side. So is there any question for today's discussion?
I have some comments, but not questions. But I see Chris just put his hand up.
Yep.
Chris, you want to go first? I wanted to respond to your original question about the naming thing on your first slide. Now that I've seen the presentation, but I'll go after Chris. I'll put my hand up.
I love the goal. It's also the goal that we had in mind for the certifier framework to provide a common API for confidential computing trust management. And so I was looking through the slides and trying to see what is the actual API that you're proposing, and would it be worthwhile to maybe collaborate with between the certifier project and this project to see if we can align on an API that addresses these issues in a consistent sort of standardizable way.
Oh yes, we also look at the certified framework is a very nice project to create a unified approach, right? So, but for us, so ours API is most along with the TCG spec is the event log measurement code, right? So this is defined in the TCG spec. So to follow that, so this is specification here. We follow for the industry for the industry spec here. Yeah. So yeah, but I think the certifier today is most for SDS and AMD based special interface, not very standard interface, right?
I think it's maybe a much higher level of abstraction, and it handles all of CCA, AMD, Intel, etc. So maybe there's a difference in the level of abstraction. I'd like to understand better what really is the API here. So if there's is this an open source project that people can look at?
Oh yes, we have actually we have specifications about the API. So so actually is compliant with the TCG, but we have not finalized. Just initial API is just related to measurement and event log. And in futures, we maybe expand the API to the key cache as the VTPM does to achieve the trustworthy scaling on cloud native clusters. Because by default in CC environment, there's no there's the attestation is almost a remote attestation, right? But we want to also use key cache, local key cache to achieve the local attestation. Then we can do trustworthy scaling when the containers do the HPA on the cluster, right? So initial APIs such as measurement, actually this is very compatible with the TCG spec, right? So it is just get it. The only thing is that we maybe edit the type here. So because when you implement the VTPM, for example, in Intel TDS or the AMD SUV, so actually you can get a different type of measurement, such as from PCR or for anti-MR, right? So we edit the type here, and for the event log, so is similar with the TCG spec, right? So you need to get what is the index here, how many event log you need to retrieve, then return the record buffer list for all the event log defined by the TCG spec, right? So yeah, for quota is a little different because different VTPM quota is include PCR index, which selected PCR to certify signed the data, right? But for the CC code, so for the TDS code or the AMD code, they have their own native format. But whatever code can be regarded as the binary blob, right? And signed by, yeah.
I'd love to see the hello world for this API.
So for sample application, right? So we have we have a cloud native primitive. So we also have a cloud native computational cloud native primitive project implemented this API, and we have another project called cloud native AI pipeline to consume this API to achieve zero trust on the Kubernetes. So we can share the link after the meeting.
So
Thank you. Yeah. So yeah.
Jump in with my comments. I know we've only got about 3 minutes left, right? And I don't know if there's anything else on the agenda, but
okay.
I'll
go ahead. Yeah.
I'll briefly give some comments, but happy to follow up over email. Just because you started off the presentation by asking, let us know if you have a better suggestion for a name. And so as I've been watching your presentation, I just want to give my initial comments here. Because first I was trying to figure out, because it might be too broad, which is what you said, right? And so I was looking to see, is it too broad? Is there a better name? I like the fact, so one of the questions that I had that you answered was, is this like a protocol, like a REST API, or a purely internal API, like just hitting a library, whether and what languages? And you mentioned it's Python, Golang, Rust, maybe some other ones, because I was looking to say, okay, where is C/C++, right? Because obviously the goals here overlap with goals in other projects, like Open Enclave SDK has C/C++ APIs for doing this. Probably Grameen and Ocloom probably do too. The one of those would be Rust. So obviously there's other confidential computing APIs that do very similar things already, right? So we want a name that doesn't collide with them. And it's fine to have multiple competing projects, right? That's the policy that we have in the TAC, is you can have multiple competing projects, even in the CCC, that's perfectly fine, right? But you just want to make sure we have a name that doesn't imply that it does everything and that there's no other ones, right? And so it's not the confidential computing API, you'd want to constrain it. Now, what I saw as being a good constraint here, as you said, your goal was to conform to TCG specs, right? Whereas the other projects are a higher level, kind of as Chris was getting to, a higher level abstraction than things that comply with TCG. And so I would suggest you put TCG in the name and strictly adhere to the TCG names if that's your intent. And so, for example, you wouldn't use CC, you'd only use TPM or TCG or something like that. So like you showed your function prototypes that used a TCG type in the argument. And so that would have TCG in the name. And if it has TPM type, and so that would be my first suggestion, is instead of confidential computing, call it TCG if that really is your intent. But I like the fact that you're language agnostic and that you do support libraries in Python, Rust, Golang, ... I think is fine to call it an API in that sense. But that's my quick feedback. I can provide more details offline, but that's my answer to your question. So thanks.
Thank you very much. Very nice recommendations. We will follow up the naming later. Yeah.
All right. Well, that does bring us to the end of time, and I know people are already fleeing to their next meetings. So thank you, Wenhui and Ken, for presenting today. And we can take discussion to the mail list or to Slack for people who like that. And think about scheduling a follow-up to continue the discussion at a later TAC meeting. And with that, I don't think we have time for any more business, but if anybody wanted to plug in for something in next session's agenda, that would be great.
I wanted a plug that could be taken care of over email, which is right now on Project Mentors. I've been the project mentor from the TAC to the Open Enclave project. And I'd like to nominate Alec to succeed me in that if the TAC wants to appoint Alec. I've already talked to Alec and I've already talked to Radhika from Open Enclave, and they would both be fine with that. But technically it's the TAC's decision and I'm not a voting member. And so that's my recommendation to the TAC. So.
Okay, thank you. We will ratify that next session. And if Alec is still on, like if one of you wants to send that note, so it's sort of there for us to remember on the mail list, that would be great.
I'll send it to the mailing list.
Thanks. Well, all right then. Dave, will we be seeing you in other TAC meetings?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
If there's something on the agenda that I can provide value to and that I am not recovering from surgery and not on drugs as a result or something like that, then possibly. But otherwise, I'll be spending a lot more of my time on the PPF side of things. And so the confidential computing stuff, let Alec drive a bunch of that thing. So I'd say don't count on it, but I am here and people can feel free to reach out to me, and I'm still involved in open source and stuff, and so it's possible.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thanks again, Dave.
Thanks for everything, Dave.
All right. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you again in a couple weeks, and be sure to stay active on the mail list and Slack. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.